Hello everyone, my name is Alex. I'm a 2000 rated over-the-board chess player, and in this series we're going from 1500 to 2000 elo in chess.com rapid games, where I'll be explaining my thought process as best as I possibly can for your education and entertainment. My opponent plays d6, known as the Pirc. He may go g6, bishop g7. We faced this in previous speedrun episodes where I essentially... Oh my god, what is that? Where I essentially recommend to play a Vienna setup, which is the opening that I normally play. I don't know why my computer's bugging out. There we go. That was so weird. I just like to play a normal Vienna sort of setup, and I don't like to commit to the move d4 if I don't have to, because it gives black more hooks to latch onto to open up the center, right? So if I can instead just focus on the light squares, I prefer to play like that. So c6, the check Pirc sort of setup. Let's go bishop c4, continue the plan of dominating the d5 square. There may also be positions where we play queen to f3 to add even more defense. Wow, e6. So basically, we can't stop the move d5. We can't stop it, but that's fine, because we'll drop the bishop back to b3 to ensure that d5 doesn't come with tempo. This is important because if we were to play a move like d3 here, right, which is a normal Vienna move, then after d5, we either have to take because our bishop is under attack, or we have to retreat the bishop. Oh my god, why is my computer doing this? We have to retreat the bishop and allow my opponent to take on e4, which I don't want to do, because if knight takes, we lose central control, and if pawn takes, then we allow a queen trade, which I also don't want to do. So knight to e7. Okay, my opponent really wants to play d5, and I can't really stop him. So let's play f4, because again, I don't want to commit to d4, because that's what my opponent knows, that's what he's expecting. I don't know those positions so well. Okay, knight g6 is very strange. Let's play d3. Secure e4, secure the f4 pawn. Again, this is kind of like a Vienna / Grand Prix setup. I mean, if this pawn were on c5, this would effectively be a Grand Prix attack, which is kind of what I play against the Sicilian, except I play it with a3 on move 2, so the bishop would probably be on a2 rather than b3, but the same goal is accomplished. Which is one of the reasons I love my opening repertoire so much, because a lot of the ideas merge together. And I got this initially from an old Gotham chess course that I studied many years ago. It was really, really useful. So let's continue with knight to f3, and we'll prepare to kingside castle. In the long run, f5 is most likely our plan of action, but there's stuff that we have to do to prepare that. If we play f5, we need to be sure of it. Okay, bishop h4. All right. Well, of course we could take, and then like queen takes g3. But I'm just going to go g3 immediately, because I'd rather him have a really bad bishop. It's not doing anything. Yeah, and also, after bishop to e7, we can consider the move h4, preparing h5, which would force the knight back to f8. Whenever there is a knight on g6, g3, b3, or b6, always think, can I push the flank pawn to dislodge the knight? Always something you should consider. Okay, bishop to f6, yep. h4 is the move I want to play. Let's play it. If h5, then I'm assuming this knight is going to be a bit destabilized. We could also play knight to g5. And if something like take, then h5 is probably going to fall. And also we get a pawn on g5, which is just exerting great pressure. But on h5, we also don't have to play knight to g5. We could just leave it for the time being and play it in the future. Also, if h5 is played, black can't really castle kingside, because h5 would be undefended. Wow, that is very bold. Of course, we're going to push h5 and kick the knight. We could even consider g4, g5 to go after the bishop, but the bishop can always take our knight. Okay, goes to f8. Okay, cool. Let's be aware of the move knight c5 here, going after our bishop. I assume that is the plan. We could play d4 now to stop knight to c5. I'd probably expect c5 or e5 anyway, though. So again, I don't really want to play d4 if I don't have to. I think I'd prefer a move like bishop to e3, and then on knight to c5, I could just take. But then again, my bishop could be quite strong in the future. So alternatively, we could just play the move a4, which I prefer, which doesn't stop knight to c5, right? But it gives our bishop a square to run away to on a2. And also, it prevents b5 in the future, which is a very common idea in the Czech Pirc. I mean, obviously, my opponent hasn't gone g6, bishop g7 like you normally would, but okay, a5. I wasn't really going to play a5 anyway, so that's fine by me. And, I mean, we could continue our expansion with g4. I suppose maybe if like g4, knight c5, bishop a2, bishop c3, bc3, knight a4. Yeah, a little bit annoying actually. Little bit annoying. Again, we can play d4, but I don't know if I want to. Although I suppose if like e5, I can always just go bishop e3. And if c5, I can just go bishop to e3. So let's do that. You can see that we're trying to punish our opponent for playing a very passive position. I mean, his pieces kind of suck. Okay, this knight's alright, this bishop's alright, but he's getting suffocated here because he is such a small center. If he was going to play this setup, he should have committed to d5 a long time ago. Okay, pawn h6. Sure, stopping this as well makes sense, but again, it feels like a lot of time to be spending just to play h6. We can consider the move e5 here, which I think I quite like. Now with the added support of the d-pawn, I can take with the d-pawn rather than the f-pawn. I think I prefer to take... do I? Which pawn should I take with? Okay, he doesn't commit anyway. Now I thought knight e5 was decent, going after d6, although there is pawn to d5, but then, I don't know, maybe I can just go knight to f2, c3, and my center is very secure. He can go c5, but it doesn't really do a whole lot, because d4 would be so well defended. I could also just start with knight to e2, but I think my knight's better on f2, because then it can come to g4 for attacks in the future. Probably want to go g4, f5 at some point, although it would be not... Actually, I think it would be nice to retreat my knight, go c3, bishop c2, then go f5, and maybe include g4. Again, my opponent's position is very, very sad. Taking makes no sense here, because we lose our best pawn, right? This pawn is a monster on e5, and our position is built around supporting that pawn, so we do not want to be taking on d6. That would be a huge positional mistake, in my opinion, and it probably is objectively. If you're enjoying the video so far, by the way, please drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. And let's just go knight to e2. Like I said, I want to play pawn to c3 to create this very nice pawn triangle leading up to e5, all supporting e5. We also have kind of a French bishop situation for my opponent, where although he hasn't committed to d5, okay, now he does. Very good timing. Because he's got all these pawns on light squares. His dark squared bishop's alright, although after c3, it has no squares it can go to anyway, because my pawns are controlling everything. But because his pawns are on light squares, his light squared bishop can't get out. The only viable plan would probably be b6, bishop a6, which knight to b6 completely destroys, because now you can't play b6. So that's, again, fine by me. I assume he's going to try and come into c4, so queen d3 makes a lot of sense to me, just preventing knight to c4. Also, you know, gearing up in the future for attacks. I think we want to make some kind of breakthrough at some point soon, because we don't want to give black too much time to consolidate. We've got 3 pieces developed, soon to be 4, if we want to. We don't even necessarily have to move the bishop, although it would prevent c5. If c5 now, then... of course, that threatens c4. Okay, brings it back to go b6, bishop a6, I assume. Alright, that's very sad. Well, let's go bishop e3 to monitor c5 a bit. He can still play it, but I can respond with a move like bishop c2. Okay, he does go for b6. Yeah, which he probably should have done in the first place. And I'm going to play bishop c2, bringing the bishop to this diagonal where it's far more useful rather than staring into nothingness. And again, g4, f5 is most likely my idea. Bishop a6, I'll just go queen d2. If you take my knight, that's not a problem. And, I mean, I could always bring my bishop to d3 in the future to offer him a trade if I really want to. Although, I think this diagonal is very useful. Also, if his bishop's on a6, it can't monitor f5. Like, if this knight were to move, the bishop would be able to see f5. So if, like, bishop a6, queen d2... I don't know, c5, I guess, then we could always play a move like f5 straight away and just trying to batter down the black center. Okay, you go c5 first. That makes sense. Yeah, cool. I suppose we should play f5. Of course, taking on c5 would be very silly. If I'm going to play f5, it means we lose support for e5, so I need to ensure my d4 pawn remains safe so that if take, I can take and keep e5 well supported, because like I said, it's suffocating the black position very, very well, so I don't want to trade it off, of course. I have potential options of taking on e6, although, like, obviously if pawn takes, that would be great, but he doesn't have to do that. He can take, if I take, he can take with the knight, which, you know, brings his knight into the game, controlling some, well, a lot of very nice dark squares. So I think if take, I'd rather do this. Okay, c4 is probably not the way to go, because you've blocked off this diagonal for your bishop, and you've released the tension on the center. I don't think that's a good option. I don't care if I have to put my queen on d2. The whole point of bishop c2 was to support the pawn. Do you have this? Maybe that's the idea. Ah, that's interesting. And then if here, then here, and I lose. So if take, knight take, bishop takes, I go down a pawn, but after kingside castle, I still think I'm doing very well. Because I've got so much space and so much activity, my opponent admittedly has found a tactic that I missed. But I don't think it's a big deal. I really don't. I don't think it matters because we have so much activity. Okay, he doesn't play it. He probably should have. I think I want to take the knight. Maybe I should go queen c2. Because then I'm threatening take, and queen g6. So if queen c2 castles kingside, that feels like you're about to get slaughtered. I mean, even take, queen g6 threatening bishop h6. I mean, that looks pretty terrifying. I mean, maybe my knight's hanging, but I don't have to commit to anything just yet. I could castle queenside, but then b5 is slightly scary, so I'd rather not. I think I'm most likely to castle kingside if I do castle at all. What else can we do? What else can we do? Again, I could take straight away. Take. Knight h4, trying to come into g6. If bishop takes, rook takes, that looks pretty nice. Also taking blocks in the bishop. Queen c2 castles. Thing is, I like my queen on d2, because then I always have this sort of idea. Maybe just g4? Does g4 do anything? Oh, what if I play take, knight f4, actually? No, that's way better. Yeah, that's way better. Way, way, way better. Because e6 is hard to defend, for a start. We also ensure his bishop is blocked in forever. Like, he just doesn't have a diagonal out. His only way into the game would be, like, d7, e8, and then you're still locked out of the game anyway, because my pawn is stopping you from coming to g6, which is where you'd want to be. Okay, knight to f8. Yeah, now we're just pushing my opponent's pieces back even further. We could play knight to h4, trying to do this, and have a second knight. So if here, take, that seems like a good trade to me, because again, his central pawns are on light squares, so if he has to trade off his dark squared bishop, which, as I mentioned earlier, is his good bishop, if we can make him trade that off, then it will only help our attack, most likely, because, like, we will have more, just more general activity, right? I think, hopefully, that makes sense. So I'm expecting him to take, because if he allows my knight in, I mean, that just seems even more uncomfortable than having to trade the bishop off, right? I'm giving him two options, and both of them are bad, essentially, and he has to make a decision. And I think that if I was playing black here, I'd probably take and try and make white prove the advantage, and he does. Rook g4 is kind of my whole idea, to zone in on g7. And also prepare knight g6, and if take, I can take with the rook potentially, and just continue to exert lots of pressure. That's my plan. And then I could play a move like queenside castle, or maybe king e2, and transfer my other rook to the f-file. Not sure how I feel about queenside castle, because, I mean, again, b5 is maybe annoying, like take a4, king c2, a3, you know, it's a little bit scary looking. So I think I'd rather have my king on e2, so that if here take and the pawn starts pushing, of course, if my rook is over on f1, then I can always take, and it's really not a big deal. Okay, bishop d7. Maybe preparing b5, I guess. Well, let's continue with rook g4. Ask the question of how he's defending g7. He may be trying to go queen to e7 and queenside castle to get away from the king side, which wouldn't be a terrible idea, to be honest. It does look incredibly dubious, I know, but one of the issues with my position is that my dark squared bishop is suffering the same sort of problems as this bishop. So if he can stop this from being an idea, right, that's the main function of the bishop, is watching h6, then my bishop doesn't really participate much in the game. But okay, let's go knight to g6. If he doesn't take, then that's fine. My knight is just very strong. If he does take, then bishop h6 is a threat, because I'll win the rook. And then, I mean, I can also consider a move like queen to f2 to take control of the f-file, potentially. I could even shift my rook over as well. I could bring the other rook in. Something like queen f2, king d2, rook to f1, something like that. Again, a4 might hang in those positions, but it's not really the end of the world. If I'm, you know, picking up significant material or delivering a checkmate, then I don't care about an a4 pawn, of course. That's irrelevant at that point. But all depends on the position, and depends on what my opponent decides to do here. He's got some decisions to make. Still, I'm giving him more decisions to make. Like, a lot of my moves are like, okay, you can do this or you can do this. And both of them are probably bad, but one is probably worse than the other. Yeah, queen e7 just blunders this pawn, which is better than it seems. Although it seems like I'm just picking up a pawn, it's actually worse than that, because now I gain control of g5 by getting rid of his pawn. And now you can't queenside castle because of bishop g5, and I win the exchange, and I get rid of my bad bishop. Even if you play a move like, I don't know, queen f7 here, defending the rook and getting off of this diagonal, it's still not good. It's still not a good position, because my bishop has a way to be active now. Whereas previously it didn't, because I couldn't access this diagonal. The only real way to do it would have been like g4, bishop f2, bishop h4, or something along those lines. Or maybe g4, g5, and then trade. So, something like that. But okay. At the very least, we are up a pawn, which is good stuff. We're not going to complain about that at all. We're also stopping the black king from getting to safety, which we're also not going to complain about. Again, queen f7 seems like the move. I have to be a bit careful there. I could mess up relatively easily. So I think I'll probably play bishop back to f4 if queen to f7 is played. But black can get a little bit of counterplay with a move like queen f5, trying to infiltrate the light squares in the position. Target this, it's a viable plan. I don't think it's good enough, but it's something. It's something. So I think queen f7 is probably the best way to fight here. Do I have anything else? I'd love to play queen f4 and offer a queen trade, because the endgame should probably be winning. And of course, if something like take and take, or take with the bishop, then it's all very good. The issue, however, is if queen f7, queen f4, my opponent can just take on h6. Right? And if I take the rook, he takes back. And if I take the queen, then he takes, and his rook is well defended. So we do have to be careful. Yeah, we do have to be careful here. So if queen f7, we can't play queen f4. Okay, he walks straight into it. Well, that's very kind of him. Bishop g5. Now we pick up the exchange. Like I said, queen f7 is definitely the way to fight there. And I'll check with the engine after the game, of course. But now it's too little too late. Because now I can take and go queen f4. And you don't have time to get to f5. Like you can't get to f5 quickly enough to start infiltrating the light squares, right? You needed to do it when you had the chance. Whereas by castling queenside, you've allowed my bishop to get to safety and pick up material, so that on queen f7, I don't have to waste time moving my bishop and allowing queen f5. Instead, I can just meet queen f7 with queen to f4, which is what I wanted to do in the first place, but I couldn't for tactical reasons. Now I can. So, okay. Queen back to e8. a4 is still under attack. I could castle queenside and just allow bishop takes. Something like rook f1. Queen b5. It's kind of scary. Kind of scary. Alternatively, I can play a move like king d2. Bishop a4. Don't know. What else can we do? What else can we do? We can deliver this check and then pick up the pawn, which seems good. Check here, take, 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 take. My king is a little bit stranded. And the queen is infiltrating, so maybe g4. Just securing the pawn. So like g4, bishop a4. Check. And then we pick this up. And of course, if queen e7, then I'll trade and pick up the bishop. If g4, rook f8. Oh my god, rook f8, check. King c7. Rook g7. The queen still has no entry. That's the important part. So let's go g4. I can maybe even walk my king over to g3 and be relatively safe. Not yet, of course, because king f2 will be met with rook to f8, pinning my queen to my king. But that's definitely an option. Definitely an option. We still have to be very careful here. We're up in exchange, but it's not over. Okay, this seems less stubborn, because now I give the check. If you step onto the d file, then rook g7 comes with check, and I force trades. So king c8 looks like the only move that makes any sense. Now I take, and the whole point is that after takes, you don't have queen to h5. That was the whole idea. And now I can probably just go queen e7, which seems to force a trade. Because if you don't trade, you still have to watch the bishop, but I'm also threatening mate. So you have to trade. And yeah, this is how we're going to win this game. Basically, my king is very weak. I'm very aware of that. So my goal is not to pick up a ton of material. Taking on g7, I only took on g7 because it was necessary, right, to infiltrate the black position and force a trade of queens. I could even, I mean, it might even be more winning to play rook e7 here and go, I don't know, like if queen here, I just take the bishop, of course. So something like queen c6. I don't know, maybe I can go queen g7 and I'm attacking the rook and I'm threatening all kinds of things. That might be more winning, but I don't need to be more winning than a queen trade. A queen trade will be more than enough to win this game. So let's take. And yeah, I mean, we can just go king e2, rook f1. As long as we don't somehow allow him to promote, to like force a passed pawn through, then we're all right. So let's go king e2. Also, the pawn on g4 is doing a great job of restricting this bishop's access to this diagonal, basically. e6 is also weak, but I don't care about e6 right now. I mean, rook to e7 accomplishes nothing. Just bishop d7, and I've gotten nowhere. I like my rook on g7 because it's protecting g4. And, you know, it means that a move like rook to f4 doesn't come with tempo on the g4 square, right? I don't want to give my opponent activity here. And he has to trade, otherwise I'm going to play rook to f7, and you're going to lose. And after the trade, black's only source of counterplay is somehow getting a pawn through. I don't really know how he would do it, to be honest. I don't think you can. I mean, if b5, b4, if I take, then yeah, you can get a pawn through, but I'm not going to take. Although, I suppose b5, b4, you can take me and then force the a-pawn through. So, I suppose you can. But my king is more than close enough to stop anything from being a big problem. And I'm just going to play h6, h7, h8, and you literally can't stop that. I could even sack my rook for the bishop and do it. So yeah, my opponent resigns. Very interesting game, and hopefully shows why I love the Vienna setup so much, and how it can be used against openings other than e4, e5, right? You can still incorporate the same opening ideas and execute similar types of plans. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let's jump into the analysis and see what the computer has to say. Okay, so the engine gives 81.6% accuracy for us, 68.9% for my opponent. Seems like there was definitely times where black could fight back, but he was worse pretty much all game. Anyway, let's jump into it. In all of these positions, the computer will always say play d4. If you can take the center, you should, is what the computer always says, but, you know, my opponent knows these positions. I know objectively this is better for white, but my opponent knows this. So let's mix it up. Knight c3. A lot of people will also play e5 when given the chance, and then we just have a Vienna, right? This is just a Vienna, and that's fine by me. But anyway, bishop c4. We're of course stopping d5 because we'll just win a pawn. Like, that's easy. So e6, an odd move for sure. Again, the computer wants d4. I like bishop b3 with the idea of meeting d5 with e5 is what I wanted to play. Again, the computer says I'm an idiot and it says this is terrible. But that was what I wanted to do. The computer wants d4, which actually transposes into like a weird French caro sort of structure. I suppose if take, we're doing really well after c3. And yeah, it's just a good caro Khan, basically, for white. But okay, knight e7. f4, again, the computer wants d4. Knight to g6, we go pawn d3. Again, the computer wants d4, but I don't want to play it. Bishop e7. Knight to f3. Bishop h4 check is not a good move. We can take, but I preferred g3. Bishop f6, and we go h4, threatening h5. And here, knight d7 is a very strange move. I mean, h5 doesn't look fun to play for black. Absolutely. This is now a permanent weakness, and you can't really castle now. Normally, you'd have a knight on f6 defending this, but obviously my opponent developed his knight differently, and not so well. I was considering a move like knight g5 here, which the engine does like, and after something like take, we have so much pressure. If like h4, gh4, rook h4, rook h4, knight h4, something like queen h5, knight g6, we're absolutely dominating this position. So knight d7, we go h5, kicking the knight back. a4, computer prefers h6. g6, I suppose the knight doesn't really have a way back into the game. It likes e5. e5? What? Okay, we're not taking, but we're playing knight e4. And if take... Oh, knight d6. So let's say queen e7. fe5, knight e5. And then it wants to play knight f to g5. Followed by kingside castle, maybe. Yeah. So like a5, castle kingside. Like fd7, d4. Oh, interesting. Anyway, I played a4. Just to give my bishop a way out of the position at all times, because I thought h6, maybe my opponent could play knight to c5 here, going after my bishop. Computer thinks not. It sees that e5 kicks the bishop away from guarding h6. But then, I don't know, maybe like take, and then knight to c5 is maybe annoying. I don't know. My bishop can't escape. And if we go back to c4, then d5 is going to come with tempo. And I'm going to have to move my bishop anyway. So a4 is what I chose. a5, strange move. I was expecting knight c5, like I said, in which case I was going to do this. And in the event of losing a pawn, I didn't really care too much. I thought this was still very good. Something like bishop to b3. I mean, I can sack this pawn and play bishop b2, and this does look really nice. But I didn't think losing a pawn was a big deal, basically. Anyway, a5. d4. Computer prefers h6. h6 from my opponent. We go pawn to e5, and we hit the bishop. I was expecting take, and I was deciding which pawn I should take with. Engine thinks both is fine. I was leaning more towards my f pawn, which it slightly prefers. And then it wants knight to e4. Yeah, that was my plan. Just controlling the dark squares and preparing c3. But he retreats. And here, see, I said it would be a big positional mistake to take the pawn. The engine wants to take the pawn. So it wants take, queen e2, pawn b6, bishop d2, bishop a6, queen f2, queen c7, queenside castle. I mean, yeah, obviously I did not see that sequence of moves, and I would never play that sequence of moves. I played knight e2, which the engine absolutely hates, and it calls me an idiot. It says that black can play take in b5. Okay, so? What if I go c3? Bishop b7? Knight f4? Knight b6? And apparently we're almost equal. Okay. My opponent played d5 anyway. I played c3, which is the best move, securing the center. Knight b6 made no sense. b6 was definitely the move. And after bishop c2, bishop a6, c5's on the way. This was much better for black. But he went knight to b6, which made no sense. Queen d3, knight back to d7. Then we go bishop e3, b6, bishop c2. Kind of self-explanatory. Here, c5 is definitely the way to go. Or at least after, which is what my opponent does, right? I went f5. c4 is not the way to go. Bishop a6 is clearly the move that makes the most sense, and you can try and fight in this position. Like knight e6, taking isn't necessarily that good for white. Knight f4, similar sort of position, but, you know, at least you've got an active bishop. What happened in the game with the pawn on c4 is the bishop just couldn't do anything. Here, taking is a mistake because of knight e5, which my opponent missed. I should have played knight to f4. Yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. And if the best move is played, knight b8, Then I play knight h4, and after bishop h4, of course trying to take, gh4. What? Knight e6, queen g2, knight c6, king f2, and I'm much, much better. Yeah, I suppose so. I suppose so. Anyway, I took on f5. My opponent definitely should have done this. Of course, I can't do this because I just lose the game on the spot. So my plan was to meet knight e5 with knight e5, which is the best move, and then kingside castle, which the engine approves of. And after bishop e6 guarding f7, knight f4, I think we still have incredibly good play. And here, the only move to not lose on the spot is bishop to f6. Everything else loses immediately because of knight e6, fe6, knight f7. So anyway, knight to e6 was played. I took, which is the best move. And with knight f4, which is good, g4 is slightly better. Don't know why. g5 maybe, I guess. And if my opponent plays a move like knight f8, yeah, I just wants g5, take, knight takes. Really likes this. Okay, I went knight f4, knight f8, knight h4, which is good, take, bishop d7. And yeah, my opponent made the right decision to take, by the way. If like bishop d7, the game is basically over. Because after the trade, I mean like rook g8, kingside castle, you just can't get out of this. Computer wants bishop g5. And then rook f3. Take, queen c7. Let's say we double up, queenside castle. I mean, you're still losing the exchange. So rook h4, bishop d7, rook g4, targeting g7, rook g8 defending. Knight g6 is a mistake. Computer wants knight e2, threatening this. Hey, you actually can't really defend that, can you? Yeah, that's tough, because if you move, I take. I did not even consider that. Okay. Backwards knight moves are the hardest moves to find, after all. Anyway, I went knight g6. Take is the only move for black. Queen e7, again the only move for black. I go bishop h6, only move for white. And here, black has to play queen f7. He just has to play it. And here, I was going to play bishop g5 or bishop to f4, which are the only moves that work. The engine recommends taking as well, maybe. And doing this. H takes, queen f3, but of course, I don't want to let the queen in like this. This is the line the engine wants to play, and I'm sorry, but I'm never playing this ever, and it's just perpetual check anyway. My opponent castles queenside, lets me off the hook. And we go bishop g5, which is the best move. The only move that works, right? Really, the only move. Queen f7, we take, and the problem is we have time for queen f4. We have time. The difference with queen f7 immediately after bishop h6 is that after bishop g5, I thought my opponent had queen f3 or queen to f5, right? If bishop to f4, I thought that queen to f5 was the way to go. The engine actually thinks I have g4 here, which I was going to play. And after queen e4, king f2, the engine thinks this is okay. Rook e1, oh, the queen has to trade herself. Yeah, and then this is just game over. But point is, the queen can infiltrate, which is the more stubborn way to play. Here, though, we win the exchange. Queen to f4, the queen has to retreat. g4's a mistake. The engine wants to castle queenside. Rook f1. I thought queen b5 was slightly concerning. The engine doesn't care because black doesn't have time. He's just running out of time. Check, and then mate. So, well, no, this is... Wait, why am I missing mate in 1? Queen e8 is mate in 1. Anyway, basically black doesn't have time to do this, but I didn't want to allow it. So I instead played g4. And I thought that was quite a nice move, to be honest. Because what I wanted to do was play queen g5, king c8, take on g7, rook g7, queen g7. But then there's queen h5, and you can see that black is kind of okay. His position is sort of held together. And here I have to find king f2, which is the only move to try and win this. So the point of g4 is that if my opponent does something like this, Then after queen g5, here, if take, you don't have takes, because 1, this is defended, 2, it would hang the bishop. That was my whole idea. My opponent played rook f8, we go queen e7, which is actually better than rook e7, because here the engine wants to give the bishop up. And go rook f7, playing on the pin. And here black is I wouldn't say okay, because even if you do take, you're still losing, but, you know, there's more play here. Anyway, queen e7 is the best move. Bishop d7, of course, we trade. King e2. I did not want to play rook to e7, because then bishop to d7. And then if king to e2, I mean, there's rook f4, which is kind of annoying, and I have to defend, right? So, and then you can give this check, and it's annoying. So I thought it was far easier just to do this. Take, and here the game is all but over. My opponent resigns. He can't stop the promotion. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to see another game where I kind of play a Vienna structure against a Pirc Defense, which is what I always do, check out the video up here. It's going to be really useful for yourselves. If you want to see the previous episodes of the speedrun, check out the playlist down there. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in one of those videos.